Hi all, welcome to another episode of Saturday Architecture. We have Venkat, uh, who has been there with us before. He's been a long-time entrepreneur and currently working on another startup that is working. He has successfully run that. Venkat is a engineering lead with AquaConnect, which is a shrimp uh, industry startup. They do end-to-end, and Deepak is with Microsoft, with his consulting solutions. So today's topic, we kind of looking at how do we localize something which is global, right? Or is it really necessary? And this triggered off based on observation Venkat had made some time back, and I kind of responded, okay, so I think we it's always a challenge that we'll have to balance both. Whether if we take global as it is and put it local, or we kind of take local into a global environment, it becomes a problem. So what I kind of mean is that when we have something local, today, especially in the corporate and business world, there isn't anything which is restricted to that local area. Now, it can be a city, state, country, or geography, right? Similarly, something which is applicable in another geography, which we say is kind of a thought leader or somebody comes and proposes, this is what is, they have invented a new methodology of doing something. And you kind of take it and kind of do a control C, control V. Somehow in the local environment, it simply doesn't work or it fails to deliver on the promise. More importantly, it gives an illusion of progress. It's just that we have found out a different way of doing something. So let's take, for example, let me kind of tell something first, right? I think one thing is which, having worked in, let's say, human dynamics, one thing which I have kind of seen is the different personality tests that we have. Brigg-Myers test, yeah, there are other tests that are there. Now, those things work very well in terms of psychometric profiling. It helps teams understand people, customers, employees, wherever they work, right? And it's and that worked in the Western culture. And somehow I find that very hard that it doesn't. There's something when I kind of try to use it as a part of my work. We work with in the space of behavior and changing, right? Somehow those that methodology, right, didn't quite measure up, right? We find people telling something, but then they are doing something. And I ask them a 10 questions, they answer that. I kind of say, oh, this is who you are, and I design something, and my entire program crashes and burns. And I kind of wonder, why is this happening? I've designed it for what they are. It took me a couple of years and probably across different mentees to understand in India, we are good at doing something. Okay. We are good at acing exams. Whether we understand physics or integration or not, I will still get 100 in that subject. So somehow people kind of tend to find what is the correct answer and answer it. Okay. So, in terms of managing people, right? What has been in dealing with people? What are your experiences around that you see as a concept, which is very popular in the global world, but when you take it local, right, within your family or your environment, it doesn't quite live up to its expectation. You seem to have done everything right, but it doesn't seem to produce results.
Anybody else wants to go first?
When you said the whole cultural example thing, I was thinking like, what is it that I find from just behavior perspective different from same concept applied into different culture scenarios, right? Immediately what came to my mind was this concept of a roundabout, right? So this circle, traffic circle, right? Now we've had circles for very long time in India, right? And all of us have grown around having a roundabout somewhere in the city, wherever you live, right? And we have seen how those roundabouts actually work. They are totally chaotic, right? Anybody is like a self-organizing chaos kind of a situation, right? You go to means I'm talking about people who drive on the same side of the road. You go to a place like UK, right? they drive on the same side of the road, and they also have these circles, roundabouts, right? You should see how it works there. It is like as if there is an invisible red light which goes on in people's mind when they enter and exit out of a roundabout. The first time I saw it, this is more than 20 years ago, when I first time went there, I saw, says, okay, this is a roundabout. Why are people just standing there? He says, no, I have to wait for somebody to give me way, only then I will enter, right? Totally. Now, so much so, I grew up in Chandigarh, which has had roundabouts every 1 kilometer, right? This is a roundabout every 1 kilometer. And there, after so many years, they decided this is not for us. They put red lights and traffic signals there, because we simply cannot understand how roundabouts work. We cannot culturally train our people, even after 50 years of having roundabouts in that city, right? They decided that we have to get rid of these roundabouts. Let us put traffic signals and get it done with. And traffic signals actually work, because somehow we have gotten into the concept that, okay, red means stop and green means go, and that is easy to understand and people follow it. So that is one example which came to my mind. It says, we cannot simply train people to be self-governed. We have to have external factors which give them this green light, red light, only then. Otherwise, roundabout does not work. And I remember this thing, somebody tried to use this as a slide. It says, how do we make a self-organizing system? It says, don't ever show this roundabout picture example in India, because it does not work. Right? If you're trying to make a self-organizing system, this roundabout is a bad example in India. So that is one example which I thought of.
I think that's interesting, right? And I kind of take that thing forward. I don't know. All of us have traveled. You can tell me. Have you seen any other place where you have a traffic signal and you have 2 cops to make sure that people are following the traffic signal? And this is not a one-off thing. It's a standard operating procedure. In all important junctions, you will have a traffic signal, and you will have one. If it's a busy junction, you will have one sub-inspector and one constable. Both of them will be there in that junction.
See, there is one more thing that is probably very specific to India. We have those cops you mentioned will be after the red light about 100 meters so that they can catch you once you jump the signals. Okay, but one way of looking at it is it's bribery is happening and all that. Another way of looking at it is it actually creates a sense of fear and a sense of responsibility for people that the cops will be there 100 meters away. So I have now come to realize that as long as things are working, it's fine. You have to adapt it to India. There is no point in this election. Okay, very specific to Tamil Nadu, not going into politics, but the conversation I've had with my friends in Facebook and real world conversations, this time we had our assembly elections between the 2 major parties. I hope we can talk a bit of politics without naming the party. Okay. So the thing I've realized, even some of my friends were well educated, senior positions, entrepreneurs, right? These are people who have run $1 million or couple of millions of dollars companies and all that. I've been speaking to them, and one thing, a common thread is corruption is the baseline. So please don't talk about it. I said, if you're going to talk, A party is better than B, please don't bring corruption. So that's common. Let's talk something else. Okay. Then if I say it is nepotism, boss, that is how it is done. Every business, you give it to your son or daughter. Politics is a business. You have to give it to your son or daughter. I was shocked for 5 minutes. And these are people who are successful, educated, well-traveled. Come what may, you can't justify corruption and nepotism. Okay. You can justify a selection of a party. That's your personal choice. But you cannot start with the premise that these two are the way of life. The reason I'm bringing it up, especially when we are talking culture, is the US politics or European politics for that matter, or countries like Singapore at the other extreme, they are all designed to avoid these things. They have every checks and balances. US organization, political system, you see, even though the president has enough powers, there is enough checks and balances. The reason for that is they thought that you should never, power shouldn't be centered with one, and you should have checks and balance and all that stuff. Here, our politicians have corrupted us by paying money for vote, and we have now come to the extreme that corruption is the way of life.
Yeah.
And it's pretty sad, but that's how people are. So I'm not saying this is an example we need to take in our organizations to corrupt people, but this is how people are getting tuned. So you can train them any way you want. So when people say that I'm not able to train my team, no boss, in 10, 15 years, our politicians have trained nearly 1 billion people by giving money that you have to accept money so that when I take money, you don't question me. So you are basically making 1 billion people accomplish of your crime. So if that can be done, why not a change management in our organization? That should be fairly simple to do.
It's kind of, it takes us, we can move from HR or people to the process bit, right? Taking that as an example. So I was looking at politicians is something which we kind of easily bring. So I was talking about government officials, right? I think it's like, so there's a family get together, a very senior doctor, must be close to 50. He works with a primary health center. Okay, and we are there. First time we are meeting, it's our children's parents, right? So not like a known circle. And he says, I go to the clinic at around. I think they are open. I think primary health centers are open between 7 to 8 or something like that, right? And then his was a morning shift. So he says, I have a morning shift. I go by around 9:30. Okay, do my sign. And I leave by 12:31, so I have to sleep and get up because I have a clinic to run and I need to be fresh. So I need to be in my clinic by around 4, so that goes till 8, 9. It's too tough for me. I work very hard. Okay, so till 9:30 I have to be in the clinic. Okay, and he has no qualms about telling, what, I'm actually not working. Okay, for an 8-hour salary which I am taking, I work 3 hours only, right? And this is in an unknown space. Now, luckily, I was just thinking, thank God, at least in the corporate world, we are not proud to say, what, I work only for 3 hours. At least we want to make the pretext that, I'm busy for 10 hours or 11 hours. We haven't.
But how do you do when work from home? Earlier, the idea of you sitting in a chair for 8 hours or 7 hours meant you worked. And you can tell your boss that I came and you can demand your salary. Now your output has to speak. Just because you're sitting in front of your computer for 7 hours doesn't mean anything. So it's a very different, I think the whole evaluation, the whole appraisal mechanisms in the last 1 year should have changed. And I've been hearing from my HR friends on senior company it has. But it's going to drastically change in the next 6 months, 1 year, more than ever we imagined. Just like all the jokes of memes that have come in, the biggest driver of digital transformation in our organization is not CEO, CTO. No, it's the pandemic. So like that, the biggest change in HR for the first time is not you clocking 7 hours, is actually your output. What are you expected? Just an example before I stop this, a large media company, this is about 15, 20 years old story, and we have been developing their portal for the first time. It's a big technology challenge and all that stuff. And we have taken this project we take it over and we run it, and then as a kind of a fixed bid project. So we wanted first 2 months to go there, sit with the client, understand their process, do one of their media properties. They had a portfolio of media properties. So we'll do that. So we had about 5, 6 of our people be there in the client place. It's in India. So we are there and we did that, and that went very well. Now the second portals, and we had about half a dozen to do. The idea is we'll all do it from Chennai and we won't be in the client place. But the client CEO called, Venkat, the first phase went very well. Why don't you all your 6 people continue for all the other portals, which is like 3 years? My cost dynamics doesn't work. And I said, this is not the way this was planned. The plan is we'll be there for the first 2 months, understand everything else we can do remotely. But he said, and the CEO, I couldn't convince the CEO. The CEO called, hey Venkat, my CEO, he just like to see people. Yeah, your people working all sitting here. Every day he comes, he feels comfortable that the project is going well. I said, that comfort was not a line item in my bill of materials. That you have to pay separately if you want me to do that. That is a big cost to it. But this is a very senior person and he has done he's heading a media company. And that's the mindset in India we come with, and I don't blame Indians alone. A couple of other countries also, if you go around, exactly. Even countries like Japan have that tendency.
Even in China also very similar.
See, I think that's an interesting thing, right? Like if you look at, probably I think that the shift over came with the industrial revolution, right? When you had factories and shifts coming in. But somehow there is something in their culture. If you clock 8 hours, right? Now previously it would be punch card or whatever, right? The technologies kept changing, right? Now, in IT companies, I'm sure, like, if you look at, there was a time when we didn't have any swipe cards. Then they made swipes. And then they introduced the clock in, clock out, and they started looking at time, like how many time were you out of your cubicle. And they started counting that, okay, to make sure that 8 hours, 15 minutes, you are inside your ODC. Okay. So that's because they want to plug the hole that people were sitting in cafeteria. Okay, they got coffee and now they're sitting at the desk and doing the same chatting. Okay, we figured out ways of innovation. Okay. So what happened is, I think somewhere in the other culture, when people are at work, they work. For us, somehow we think, you want me to be at the desk, I will be at the desk. It's not necessary I have to work. So in our thing, that thing of, that 8 hour slot, which we took from some other thing, doesn't work here. And it's kind of surprising. I used to work, I worked very closely with Philippines also. I can't say this is a Southeast Asian kind of a thing. In Philippines, the BPO sector, right? We give them instructions. Now, as a program I run, I tell them to do a couple of things, right? Philippines, we tell them something, 70% of them just follow. I don't have to follow up with them also. In India, it's only 20%. The rest 50, I have to remind them and make them do it. Somehow listening and doing, right? And following that is not there. So even if you say 8 hours, this is what you need to do. It doesn't work. I think, so basically we have aped that, and probably we have just, I don't know, it's like built more inefficiency in the system. Probably we should have localized to say, instead of 8 hours, we have to work on what is the deliverable that you would get at the end of the day, right? If you're a doctor, have you treated 30 patients? If so, move on. Okay, it doesn't matter whether you are there for 1 hour or 3 hours, right? Or as a waiter.
The example of 30 people you have to see in a day, I'm not sure. I think we have to innovate here. We don't have the right answers for us. Okay, we can keep complaining for ages on what doesn't work in India, but I think we have to go to the core and figure out why these things are happening. And the doctor example, there are some new thoughts. Why should you say that there are 30 people you should treat? Why don't I follow the health of the community? Like in pandemic, some states actually did. Is the disease in your locality coming down, or it's under control? Or they are also coming up with mechanisms. Are people coming in for more people coming in for checks? How sooner they are coming in? From the being quantitative, they are moving it to qualitative, and also being overall health and wellness of the community. I think those people, we have all read good examples of some here and there, good examples of how pandemic has been controlled or handled in different places. Wherever you saw it's been done well, those have been a qualitative approach. It's not quantitative. We are not going to win this war by doing more and more and more and more tests, though we'll have to keep doing it. But then there has to be a behavior change, there has to be a community change, there has to be a sense of belonging and all that. Coming back onto the point, this is on a not so a good example, but then you were talking about punching cards and all that. There was a project from the Broad project, not US. We got once in our thing again, couple of years or many years back. They wanted to actually clock you were talking about when they came into the office, when they came out and all that, right? This was a requirement where they wanted us to write a driver for Windows and I think Windows machines only, where it will sit on through AD, it will get pushed every time you log in, and when people log in, the time that they are actually typing or using their mouse. Okay, I don't remember webcams were a requirement of you staring at cams, but it was keyboard and mouse, I remember very well. The time that you spent typing or moving your mouse or doing some activity, that had to be clocked at a system level, and then you have to put it somewhere. So this was a pretty big project for a couple of thousands of employees. Would have been very lucrative, and my partner was saying we can do it and we have the expertise to do it. I refused. We are not going to do this. The reason I refuse one is, of course, I didn't feel comfortable of tracking people and all that, because I believe you should generally let go people. Your results will be much better than when you track. But the other point is, I was afraid that we are going to write something at a system level for a large corporation, and I'm not sure what security holes we'll introduce in that. And if anything happens, we won't be able to take the burden, legal burden of that company suing us. This project was not worth it. Probably it was like $100,000 or less than that, but they will sue us for millions of dollars. So the risk versus reward just not worth it. And probably after 10-15 years, you see the solar winds and stuff like that. Yesterday, I don't know how many of you have seen the news, PHP open source repository has been injected at the code level, has been injected with some malware.
This is something we discussed 2 weeks ago, exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of that's a huge problem, and I think they're doing it very planned manner. So it's something like one of my team, he contributes to WordPress. So it's a planned approach that they take. So what they kind of do is they initially somebody starts sponsoring some. So it is not like the core PHP, right? It has 1,000 libraries working with each other. So I will find one library which is kind of not very popular, but popular kind of a thing. Okay. Then I will go ask that person doing that block or module some questions and get to know them. Then I'll say, you're doing good work. I have used this feature. Let me donate for you. So slowly I become their pal. And then I say, it's kind of interesting. I want to make a change. Can you add me as a collaborator? Then I'm done. Now I've got into how to push that code right into that thing. So into this, and it's virtually hard. You have 50 levels of components, right? Now at some level, but when we look at it from outside, it says, oh, PHP got injected, right? But I don't know how people can actually steal this. That ecosystem is...
No, see, there are two angles to this. One, which is very relevant. The reason I brought for this conversation is, from being a technology thing that you find a loophole, a vulnerability, which is purely WizKids sitting and cracking at their keyboards, this has become a social engineering problem. SolarWinds and this is purely a social engineering problem. You actually read the SolarWinds, the white paper on what has probably happened. It's like a James Bond movie. They got in people at very senior levels. Maybe these were spies who were sent in. Those we don't know yet, but you could imagine it. There is a possibility of those.
Correct.
And they getting in, and that's what is happening. So companies also have to worry that when you recruit people, and if you are working on very important projects and projects which are going to run at the system levels and things like that, you have to vet your people more than ever. So we had joked when you started doing abroad projects many years back, your clients wanted your people to be doing drug tests, blood tests, and all that, which I felt was nonsense. Why do you need all this? But now coming back, it's more to say what we thought was wrong is becoming kind of needed 15-20 years back. Now, if you think with the SolarWinds, probably you should do a police check with people before you recruit them. I'm not trying to scare, but we have to be cognizant of this is the way the world is moving. As software is eating the world is dirty, world has bad people, bad actors, all that is going to come on or already has come into technology, and social media is just a window.
You remember the gun story, Kumaran, last time when we discussed this thing? He says you can even have somebody at ransom and say, okay, I'm going to hold, just like the old Hindi movies, Tumhari maa mere paas hai, code likho, that kind of story.
See, today you can do all this remotely. That is the point.
Yeah, correct.
You don't need to be physically carrying a gun. You don't need to be physically in a premise. See, again, these things can be stopped. Humans, we are good. We will adapt. I don't want us to take the discussion on a negative note, but we have to be cognizant that these things are possible, and we have to keep our eyes and ears open to figure out. Kumaran, on your question, how these open source projects are going to become more secure, I'm pretty hopeful, because the things like what Amazon is doing now with their code, auto code analyzer, whatever it was called, those are just indications that I'm sure in the next few years, these AI tools are going to become so sophisticated in understanding your code, what they do, and they'll be able to figure it out. We thought 15 years back, YouTube, there is no way you can stop pirated content, music content. Today, YouTube is phenomenal. You can't put a 30-second clip out of any music, which is made anywhere in the world by known album, YouTube will find it out. If you think about it, 15 years back, I tell
Yeah.
you this from a technology perspective, it is unbelievable what they are doing, the signature, the fingerprinting, what they are doing. That same kind of thing is going to come on to source code also. And we have to be cognizant of the fact. And it's also going to have a cultural impact for us because many of our IT service jobs are based on simple understanding of the code and doing migration. Those jobs are just going to go away.
Correct.
So, what is your sense? Are Indians more susceptible to social engineering or less susceptible? What is the read? What is the read which you have?
See, my gut feel says we will do better because inherently we don't trust anybody. We are a society who like to defend ourselves. We don't trust our government. Corona, we don't trust our governments. We know that I have to protect if anything happens, my government is not going to come and help me. Same when you travel abroad, the last place you want to be is in your local embassy. They are the least people who are likely to help you. And even when we drive, you are driving example on roundabouts and roundanas, is that we are survival of the fittest. Nobody is going to help me. The cop is not going to be sympathetic to me. I'll have to defend myself. So we are always in a war mode because we don't trust anybody. Trust only comes within family and friends for us. But when you go to a culture, Eastern Asia or the European culture, default is trust. Question only when you betray that trust. We work reverse. I have to earn your trust first. You don't trust me. You inherently put me on a 10-level container and seal me with the least privilege. I'll have to keep going one level up. Whereas abroad, other cultures put you on the reverse. You are put on the most super admin privilege and you have to keep going. So my sense, our guards, our antennas will go up when something like this happens. But we have to train our people that bad guys also are there. Bad guys can be from our customer side also. So that kind of education we do, I think we have the right antennas to pick this up. The other cultures which operate on default trust mode, they will find it difficult, but they are smart people, so they should figure it out pretty smart. But it's going to be very interesting times.
I think that this similar concept means that the trust culture is also same thing applies even if you look at Indian organizations and Western organizations. You will see the difference. A simple example which comes to my mind is how open your firewall is inside your company, right? Most companies in India basically block Facebook, minimum. But most Western organizations, nobody blocks Facebook, right? It is just open and they browse and they trust the employees and say, we know what you're doing with your time, and if you're doing Facebook, you're doing Facebook, right? Nobody is tracking you just because you're doing Facebook. So I see the difference also within that. Kumar,
there is also a thing there in my own example in our when I merged my business with a larger business. They had blocked all Facebook and all the others. Only the work sites were open. And I was arguing them, this is not a good thing to do. You should just open it up and let people
decide for them.
These are adults, so let's treat them that way. We were having this conversation for about 5-6 months, but initially the employee said, you got to give us permission and all. Then after some time, we stopped hearing from them. So my antennas went up. There is something. Either my firewall is not working right, or because the pushbacks from the employees were not coming. Then I was chatting to my manager. He was saying, hey Venkat, that problem is gone here. What is that? What's the problem? How is it gone? People are all carrying their cell phones. You don't prevent them carrying their cell phones. So they are using Facebook and all in their cell phones and they are comfortable. It's private. If at all they want to use it, they create a hotspot and connect to that phone and be done with it. What's the problem? And we were debating something when the mobile internet was slow, but the mobile internet caught up in India, but we were still debating whether to open in firewall or not. So
yeah,
that's why. So if at all that is a lesson, you should have your millennials on your boardrooms.
Yes.
So now I feel if 50% of your boardroom is about 30, then you have a problem.
It kind of is those local thing, right? So when we say local, I think it gets another flavor. Now I'm just switching slightly from process and technology, something at that boundary. Okay. So let's take something like we have a stand-up meeting. Okay, agile stand-up meeting, probably a decade old. Okay, and one of the things is that, or let's have an introspection meeting where we will get the customers in. Okay. In West, what I have seen is if the customer is unhappy with something, we see them expressing that I don't like it. Right? They'll be upfront, and you can say, and if they say like it, we can trust that they like it. Okay. In India, I think Venkat, you and me have worked, right? Initial proposal, sign off, happy, prototype, happy, integration testing, happy, system testing, happy. Finally, you go production, and then you go with the final payment invoice. Then some 50 bucks will come
Correct.
after you have done all these things. Okay, so what? All those things you said good, and then finally when I say payment, now you say the whole thing is messed up, and you come up with $100. Okay,
Correct.
so it is. And I don't know why, right? Is it that they want to be nice or they don't want to get into things, which is predominantly case. I don't think there is some few cases where it's malintention. They don't want to pay us. That is what silly thought feeling is there. But I don't think that would be the majority case. But most of the time people don't want to get into a conflict. But when it comes to final payment, now they have to take responsibility for their decision. So at that time, they will put their foot down and saying, all this is not working. Unless it is working, I will tell. Till then, they were being nice to that because they don't want to have a confrontation. Right? So if I have to kind of do, and I think one thing that you said, Venkat, is we got to be innovative about what we are measuring, right? And how we check. What is the process that we are, like, as you said, for a doctor, maybe.
No, sorry to interrupt. There is
Yeah.
one point most important. What I've realized is the reason I told that example also is that whether it is West or East, what process we take, there is a dimension which we typically miss out, which is the time dimension. That is why I brought in the millennial example, because I keep telling this myself, because especially when we are been in the industry for the time that many of us in the call are, we try to think that we have been that, done that, and that's how it's going to work. And that's a cliche. Again, I believe it's a cliche people have been telling, but actually it's not so, because the work culture that millennials or my son or your son is coming, they look at the world very differently. It's not that we can't say they are bad, good. The eyes that they have are very different. The way they approach the problem, their outlook about life, everything is different. So it's like they have a new pair of eyes than us. Our eyes are older. Theirs is new. They can take in more color and all that stuff. So the point I'm trying to say is, whatever process, whether it is East or West, you also bring in a time dimension. And then keep evaluating. And this you can't do every year once, change your process, change your culture. It doesn't work that way now. It has to work it has to be very dynamic. It's not 3 months, 6 months, it's not daily at the same time, but you have to have a mechanism where this constantly keep evolving, and you kind of check whether, kind of a unit test you have to keep doing onto your process and your thing, time and again. So time dimension is what I want to highlight on. Sorry, Kumaran, continue.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think when you say time dimension, it is like the process or the idea which started, right? One is, of course, geography, and local also, when you mean like how current is it? So how current is that thought process which is there, right? It's one is, of course, I said geography and culture, and I think the other thing about localization is how current or how updated is it to the current feeling that exists. I think, for example, what you're just telling is true. Probably we used to make people work telling that you will get fired. Now you tell that, thank you, please do. It's an opportunity for me to increase my salary by 10%.
So
I can go on a trip.
No, and these things will change. We have this conversation next year or 2 years down the line. Maybe India economy is not doing well, and this whole process changes. So we are not in an isolated environment. Again, the point is software technology. We used to be something different from the outside world 5-10 years back. Now we are part of the same world. We are part of the real world. What we do impacts real world. Real world impacts us more than ever because we are part of it. So the idea of Silicon Valley or Bangalore being different from Delhi and Bombay is all gone. So just like this virus doesn't differentiate between any country, rich, poor, your process also should handle it accordingly. Two examples on the local, on the culture you were talking about, which I remember. One, we were working with a large Japanese company many years back, and we did a full project for them. And we thought we were very good because bugs were very low, and we have done a good. Initially, bugs were high, then the client handholded us to teach us and all that, and our bugs kept coming down. We finished everything, it went live. Client side, they got bonus, everybody was happy. The client people came down. That's when I had seen them when I went to Tokyo to do the pre-sale thing. But then after they finished, the client came down and we had a big kind of postmortem on what's happening, etc. And we were having big meetings, and client GM and delivery manager, everybody was there, and we all chatted. We went for lunch, dinner. At one of the dinners, I took the GM out and I was chatting with him offline, nobody else. He said, I asked him, everything went well. I kept asking him those questions 2-3 times. Is there anything we should improve? Because we're going to do further projects with them and all that. After much asking, he finally said, Venkat, he picked up one technology and one area and said, this thing, your guys are continuously doing the mistake, and I'm putting my people who are working late nights to fix it. Okay, the technology is very simple. It was a 1 pixel correction in a JavaScript thing, which is very important and all that. But I asked him, why didn't you put it as a log? He said, initially we put it, your guys couldn't change it. They were struggling, but my people could do it. And so they, moving on, they were doing it themselves. And we were doing a separate bug tracking thing where we were putting it. Okay. Boss, we are working as a single team, it shouldn't work. But the way he saw that, the way I was saying, he was paying me, this is something I should have done, it's my mistake, I'm not delivering what I'm supposed to. The way he was seeing, that's where the culture difference and the way they look at things differently. The project has to succeed. We know your guys don't have the bandwidth or the knowledge to do this. So what is the point in me pushing it to you continuously? We can do it, so we are doing it. And why should we put it to you? Is the way they were looking at this. That was a big revelation for me. But that you will only get it in the Asian cultures if you ask people outside on a stand-up. My thing, it's not going to come up. If you are going to ask to find out what you need to know, which people will never tell you, it's not going to happen over an email, it's not going to happen on a stand-up. It will happen in the restroom, it will happen in a water cooler, it will happen in the car. You have to take them in confidence outside the meeting rooms and get it. And that's an effort as a manager you will have to do. There is no other way to do this.
Completely agree. So if we have to achieve that intention, right, the intention is to know what the customer is actually feeling. If we
the intention is actually the success of the project, what we are working on. That is what I learned from my Japanese client. It's not about you. It's not you as a customer. It's not me as a vendor. That's not how you look at it. That's a very American way of looking at it. That's where even when we say abroad, cultures change. So we have to learn from different cultures the best. From the Japanese, I've learned it's not about who I am, who are you. It's about the project that we are working on. The project has to succeed. In a way, it's like you're somebody going to a battlefield. It's not about I live or my person next to my brother next to me who's fighting shoulder to shoulder, he lives. It's whether we can kill the enemy.
I agree. What I meant is the process that we are taking, the intention behind it. So if we say the stand-up meetings are an introspection meeting, the intention of that is to discover what is really happening in the world. Are we doing something good or bad? Now that intention, following that method prescribed in, let's say, the SAFe standard, ask ABC questions, that won't work in our culture. So what we have to do is something else to achieve that same intention. Can I do an equivalent of an introspection meeting, which will suit our culture? I don't know what that is.
I won't throw the baby on the water also. I still think the prescribed standards for stand-up meetings and all that is good. We have to keep moving towards that. But at least initial stages, you have to do this offline meeting. So train people. Over a period, I'm sure they will come onto this process. But it will take a lot of time. You have to invest as a manager to take these questions offline, train them, and then bring them onto the forum. And every once in a while, keep checking whether this thing works by talking to them offline.
Okay. So let's say
so it's a combination. It's what we do. We buy a pizza and then we put the masala on top of it. paneer tikka pizza. So that's what we want. We want pizza, but we want paneer tikka also.
Correct. So I think so. What you're telling is, if I say introspection meeting is a textbook thing, I will derive an introspection dash. In that, I will have an additional function: build a rapport with the customer men over coffee or drink or whatever. Build it, help them share it. Stage one, let them share it to you. Stage two, they will share it to you, but in the introspection meeting, you will open it on behalf of them. Stage three, they will tell it. Stage four, they will tell it. Could be something like that.
Correct. And you will have to keep repeating this process. That is where the time dimension comes. The whole thing of you improving your process has to be happening periodically. That is, which is where I go back to your older problem. We'll have to keep following with our people. In abroad, especially in the US, when you set a process, that's how people will work. Believe me, if you set a process and you don't follow it up in 6 months in India, that process is just not going to work. So you have to keep following again that what you said is actually working, and use that opportunity to fine tune.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting, for all the people say India is not innovative. I don't know, somehow any rule come, we are innovative enough to break around that, right? We came up with DMO, 2 days later, people are finding out how to get crores of rupees to convert it, right?
No, the government had to do 58 days, 58 notices to change the policy of what you can go and give the cash and get it back and all that. Why? The people are 5 steps ahead of the government in cheating, and the government has to do. That's how. But initially, I thought the government is stupid that they are changing the rules 58 days. But after 2-3 years looking back, this is the only way they could have done it in India, because they couldn't have anticipated. See, if it is Singapore, they would have said, "These are all the things that will come, and for this you will do this. For this you will do this." They would have modeled it endlessly and come up with 10,000 models of what would have happened. In India, we can't, because the models are a million. So what you need to be is agile, keep ready to change. But of course, the tellers on the banks had horrible days and nights. So that is the way we'll have to do it in India.
So I think, so the thing from basically what you're telling is, like, you have the larger intent of that, but then there has to be a path to reach there. That should be the goal. We acknowledge that we are not there. That could be because of geography, because of time dimension. It could be anything, but acknowledge that we will not be there. There will be a difference, and the endeavor is to continuously get to that point.
Exactly.
Interestingly, I have you heard this guy called Sanjeev Sanyal? He's a chief economic advisor for the government of India, right?
Okay.
He's expected to be the brains behind a lot of the economic schemes which the government launches, right? And so the exact thing which Venkat just mentioned around that adjusting it while on the go, right? So he was actually giving some interview he was giving. A lot of videos are available on YouTube. You can check it out. He talks about history and other stuff also, but specifically around, he said his specialization is around how do you make decisions in times of uncertainty when you do not have enough information, right? And it is an evolving situation, and that's what he gave the example of how they decided to do the pandemic thing, right? And his specialization is economics, obviously, so he gave the example of why India did not go with the same model as all the other Western countries, where they give a huge stimulus to bring back the economy. He says we could not afford to do it because, first of all, we did not know how it will evolve. If we spend all our effort in doing the whole stimulus in one shot, so we said we will do only things which we know and understand at that point of time and adjust as we go along, right? Now, looking back on that, means initially, if you read the newspapers, he said India is not doing enough, they are not spending enough money, they are not giving enough money to people. So the example he said, if we gave money, people would have just kept that money in the bank. That is exactly what happened in US, right? So that is actually one example of how you can take a economic approach which is evolving in nature and not sort of written in stone approach where you say, okay, let us do a big bang thing and not react when the things happen.
Yeah. See, two, three things. One, like you said, that's one. And the pandemic, if you talk about on the way people are doing, one thing I'm quite happy is the different countries are taking different approaches to handling the pandemic. Okay. Maybe some of them we may think is incorrect or not the best way to do, but globally for humanity, different approaches actually makes sense because we didn't know what it was. It was a novel virus last year, and different approaches, whether it is Sweden approach or some other approach or the New Zealand approach or the approach US took or what China took. We had like 3-4 models at least to begin with to actually see and learn. Now this year India's second wave is bad, but then hopefully we should be able to manage it better because we have had the learnings of the last 1 year. So these different models are actually good. Indonesia, when it comes to vaccination, they are actually doing it for the youngsters first. They are the only country which is doing it for the youngsters first because they are saying these are the people who are moving around. We vaccinate them. The movement of the virus, we can actually control. The rest of the world is actually doing protect the vulnerable. Earlier, we had the Chinese model of lockdowns. But looking back, now I read some books on 1918 pandemic. There are a lot of interesting things. I won't go there. But one thing which has worked is trying out multiple things will actually tell you which one kind of works. And I think even in the organizations, like even in the movie Tenet, they had 2 teams working, one in the inverted time, one in the normal time. Many organizations, I am now reading examples where organizations, especially for security, are having a red team and a green team, or a red team and a blue team, whatever it is. So one works to protect it, one works to hack into it. I think that's a beautiful model. This was like your A/B testing, which we used to do, taken to security world. I think it's a very innovative idea. We should think in many projects, whenever we do these discussions, have this kind of 2 teams, if not opposing each other, at least complementing each other or adding value. I think that's a brilliant way of doing it. Which in India, if you look at it, I'm just thinking, any conversation, whenever you put something that crow is black, there will be at least 2 people who would say crow is white. Or at least the crow I saw when I went to Kasi was white.
Yes.
So
this is the argumentative Indian approach, right?
No, we should bring it to our advantage.
Yes.
Correct.
Why avoid arguments? Let's have arguments, but then arguments will be this way. So that is one. So different approaches, I think, is a way we should be going about doing it apart from time. The other one is a good example. I thought about an IAS officer in Tamil Nadu who retired recently. He was telling about an example. He was heading one of the government corporations. Okay, they were into selling some consumer goods for small vendors and things. So he was trying to raise money to do a big kind of showroom to house these products that people have made from around the state and all that. It's a state government corporation, 100% owned by state government. The state government said you raise loans because you are going to sell it. It's like a shop. It's a corporation. You are a company. So raise money. The treasury didn't want to support him and he was going crazy. And this is an example he has quoted many times in his talks as well. Once he was driving, his driver asked him, "Sir, why are you so worried? What is your..." He said, "This is a brilliant idea. I know it can help people, but I can't raise money." He said, "Sir, you have this land which is the corporation owns. Why don't you build a building and then rent it out and go to a bank for building this building? This is an asset that you are creating. Bank will give you a loan for the asset. Otherwise, the bank said you are a government-owned corporation, get the government as a guarantor," which he couldn't. So in this case, the asset he is going to create, like our housing loans, is not based on any other surety. It's based on the collateral is the house itself. So same model, the driver said, "Sir, why not you do that same here?" I'm sure you would have said it in a very simplistic terms, but the IAS officer took it, he did it, and that's one of the success stories of the department and all that. And this is a great example of a jugaad and you getting wisdom from places you don't expect. And that's where my wife says you have to talk to everybody. She goes to a shop, she keeps talking to the teller for 10 minutes and everybody else behind in the queue will keep complaining. But then once it is done, she would have just stood there for 10 minutes and talked to the teller. On the way home, 1 hour drive, she'll tell what that lady told her. So that's the observation. That's the communication.
I think that's what you just said is also an example of localizing, right? So now what you just said is at a general corporate level, you want money, there will be a bank, you go take money, you give a project, they will give approval, and then you will get it. That is your conventional thing, right? Now here, localizing it is at the corporation level, there is a localization again that's happening. This is my asset, and then that I think that is I think that it's kind of interesting, right? Even though we are calling it localization, I think that's what innovation is about. What works in my context, making it work.
See, it is context, it is people, it is time, it is culture. It's a combination of all of that.
Hmm.
Yeah, it is right. So like when it comes to the like innovation, actually Indians are having the own way of innovation, right? So if you look at the scenario in 2000 to 2005, like at the time, that they are the only innovators who innovate the missed calls. You know, previously, nowhere country they utilized these features. As far as I know, no one country is utilized right this much of features. Like when I give the missed calls, that means I reached home. When I give the missed calls, no, I am in a travel. So like something like so. This is the way we people know used. So the same way, some feature does not work in other way like abroad. It doesn't mean that it will not work here. If you take another example, if you take the West, like caller tunes nowhere is so popular. Nowhere is it is utter flop. But India is a more successful money making machine for the operators, right? Like mobile operators. So we are having the one way of innovating. Please go ahead.
No, please finish.
Yeah. So the thing is like how we are going to how we are going to market and going to package the product for our localized context. So that's what I mean to say.
See, one of the other things apart from the time and culture is we have been all quoting. All of us have been quoting. If you notice, examples from Japan, US, Europe. We are not talking much about China. I think that's the country. If we are talking about doing it for this century, especially technology, the country that we should closely observe is China, because they are doing a lot of this, and they are even thought leaders on this. They are 20 years ahead of us in thinking these problems through. They also have cultural problems. They also have people problem. They are an autocratic society, probably. If you haven't seen, there is a good movie to understand this, The American Factory, which was sponsored by I think Barack Obama's foundation also. You should check out that movie. It's on Netflix. How a fledgling factory in US, it gets bought over by a Chinese company, and then it becomes that Chinese are giving jobs to America and become a big positive thing. But then the American workers couldn't work for a Chinese boss, and they couldn't understand why until these people were taken to China, where they saw how it is working, and then they realized, oh my God, we can do these things very differently. And that's a realization that comes to them only when they go to the mainland. So that's a country we have to watch and understand, maybe learn. We don't need to blindly follow them, but there's a lot of learnings that we can take from them. Even the recent skirmish between India and China, I think there is a lesson on how China handled it. You may argue it's positive, you may argue it's negative, but then I think there is a lesson on how these are going. It's probably some of the articles I've written that the India-China skirmish that happened is a precursor to how these things are going to happen in the future. It's going to be very limited warfare, or it's going to be a full-fledged warfare with drones. The in-between is gone. So we have to be ready for this world where today in this India-China skirmish, we don't know whether India won, China won. Who lost territory? Nobody knows. I lost some men, you lost some men. Did I lose territory? Did you lose territory? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
That's the kind of warfare it will go.
Incidentally, last 2 years I've been working with the customer in China, and I was in China for almost 6 months. So,
Okay.
and Kumaran knows this thing. We discussed this thing quite a few times on the cultural similarities and differences, right?
So you'll have lots of stories to
And
share.
in number of ways, Chinese are lot like Indians, and number of ways they are very different also, right?
Okay.
So in number of ways, they are very conforming societies, right? Means they will conform because they have been through a lot of churn in the last 1,000 years, you would say. So it means they had instability in every area. So it's not that, you see, lot of people who live in US and all, they feel China is a pressure cooker and is willing, it's going to explode or something like that. Nothing like that is going to happen. People are willingly following what they are doing there. It's a social contract which they have made with the government. You give us prosperity, you do whatever else you need, we will follow instructions, right? It's not like people are always following rules there. It's like at the below some surface you will feel, means you go to a village, means I literally almost went to a backwaters village kind of area also. There is hardly any difference between a village in India and a village in China in that sense, right?
Yeah.
And but once you get out of the village, you come onto the highway, it's completely a different world altogether, right? Are people always following rules? Not always. People breaking rules, yes, but 80% of the time they are following rules, 20% they will break rules. But wherever they break rules, the punishment is big enough for them to not break rules. So that is the difference which I've seen. And even the organizational culture, right? Means I worked with something which you will almost classify as a public sector bank, right? And I've seen the difference between the public sector bank in India and the public sector bank in China, right? Of course, they have all the similar kind of things exists, right? Like playing it safe, not going outside the boundaries. So you want to push technology. So and whole different kinds of approaches I've seen. Means you would think that it is a top-down culture where the leaders says you do this and everybody does it. It is exactly the opposite there. So what happens is leaders come and say, okay, tell me what all you can do. Then I will say you do this, this, and this. So leaders are not providing any vision or anything, right? Leaders are saying, okay, my team can do this, add, multiply by 2, do that. Right? So instead of...
That's a very, very, very valid example, Deepak, that leaders are not providing vision. I think that's if we have to kind of have a summary, that has to be the thing that we have to be aware in India, because last year, pre-pandemic, I set up a small lab with 2 people who used to work for me earlier. The idea is these 2 people will experiment on technologies. We'll see whether anything can be taken to the market with no fixed objectives. And in the 1 year, leave aside the pandemic, I haven't gone anywhere. It so happens that every day I have to say, okay, you have to do this. Okay, not that those 2 people are not smart, but they are not able to work on their own. Maybe it's a bad hire by me. I'm not generalizing it, but I'm quoting it as an example. What I was looking for is they will use this opportunity to try out various things, Google Cloud, AI, ML, TensorFlow, whatever, and then come and say, oh, Venkat, we can do this with this, this with that with this, and then I can connect all of them. But then nothing like that happened. This I've seen even in the organizations where we like to improve stuff or do something to the client. You're going and pitching. You all come up with ideas. Nothing comes. We have to at least give the categories so that people can think here. But what you're saying in China is very good. I mean, so I should hire Chinese for this team.
No. It's not like they are coming so it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy that the guys at the lower level, they don't want to do anything outside their comfort level, right? And the guys at the higher level, they just don't know where to go and say, okay, you tell me what you can do and I will just make you work harder.
Okay.
Right, that's all. My job is to just to make you work harder. I don't care whether that is innovative or not. Whatever you say you can do, I will just make you do twice that much, right? So you will see people. So means I also means since I was on site there and I was dealing with a lot of people there, so apparently we got a good reputation because we were there till 9 o'clock at night sitting in their office, right? Customer appreciated it like anything. He says, "Oh, you guys are here. You guys are from this sort of American company, and you are sitting here till 9 o'clock. We did not expect that. We are very happy. It does not matter what we actually delivered."
Huh.
Right?
Actually, it's kind of interesting, right? Which is something which me and Sukumar noticed, right? He's running innovation and we've been doing hackathons, right? Kind of it says that, hackathon, you create new ideas and things like that. I think probably that localization there is like you give specific problems and then deploy to production, then that hackathon becomes more meaningful. Otherwise, hackathons by itself, like millions of hackathons have been done, right? And there's actually that leadership is also another problem. I think that localization has to come. The local leader cannot do just a copy paste. In fact, I think it's this little bit of a rant though, but even for the science and R&D, right? There's so much of money that's spent on science today. So the CSIR grants that is there, it's actually pretty phenomenal. But it's just that you have PhD people just doing one paper, rehashing it, doing it another thing, and for 3 years government pays them research, but there's no result coming out, right? So I don't think it's a fair statement that we don't have money for research. We do have it. But probably we'll have to just say, just putting money at there isn't enough. So that localization probably is got to do with, we have to continuously experiment, keep include newer people so that we get those ideas. And probably it's also that the leadership kind of needs to see that, commitment to something happening, right? The actual, what should I say, proof that the pudding is in the eating. If we can get that, I think then that localization would be more useful.
One of the things that also come up, Kumaran, in what we discussed now, if you think about it, is that we talked about various things, right? One more thing we have to think, when we think about diversity, we always think about the multi-race that exists in the US or the other things. They benefit by that. Now they are all realizing that your team should consist of people from multiple races, multiple backgrounds, multiple ethnicities, multiple languages. So they have evolved that. But if you come back to India, how many of our teams have people from other geographies or other countries? Okay, language probably inherently, yes, our teams are all multilinguistic by default. Okay, but I think we also need to look at this. We have to do a self-introspection on us, our teams also, and see, can we pull it? And today it's remote work, right? Correct. You have a 100-member team or a 500-member team working remotely. Why not somebody, an Indian in America should be working in your remote team? Why not a Filipinese working in South America be part of your team? Why not a Chinese in Singapore be part of your team? Okay, they don't need to be multiple in a 100, 500,000 member team. These people could be handful. But I think we should start somewhere there so that Indian companies can get benefited by the same thing that we accuse the West of all. I think it's time for us to also introspect and start doing it.
The very interesting thing happened to me last night, in fact. So I was supposed to be in some call, and the people who set up the call, they were in Middle East, and it's a Friday, so it's a holiday actually. And we didn't realize why they would set up the call. This is a holiday there. Why did they set up the call? And I and another person, the other person is joining from Panama, which is the Americas, right? So, and he's a Panamanian of Chinese origin, and and I am joining from Asia, and he says, okay, why, I don't know why these guys never showed up. Why did they set up this meeting? So we started talking about half an hour. We just talked about China and India and Panama and just random cultural talk, and he started saying, I was looking at the Indian weddings, Netflix series. So means I just means obviously we've been working in this connected world, but when you see this thing come from and these connections happen, this is how people connect to each other. Means for me, Panama means Panama Canal. That's it. That I don't know anything about that country, right? And just to realize this is how we influence each other is amazing. Means, and he's talking to me about that whole wedding series, and I'm trying to explain to him how that is just maybe one part of India. The weddings like happens like that, and not everywhere else. And but he also got it. Says India is like multiple countries. So I was telling him how many people you are immunizing. So just last number is some 20 million people got immunized in one day. Oh, with that number, we could have whole of Panama will be immunized 5 times because your population is 4 million. Right? I never thought of those things. Right. So that is an interesting conversation. Just means.
No, it's a good point that you're making. The thing, two things we have to be proud of India. One is the scale of our elections. Even the election I voted on.
Yes.
My mother, she is up 80 plus. So they came to our house and she voted in our house. Okay, and they brought the manual paper voting thing, but 5 people came, including a police constable lady, and 4 people along with her came, and they made it so comfortable for my mother. The returning officer actually taught her, okay, this is how you have to do, this is how you have to do. And they put that blinder, privacy guard, and everything was videographed. It was superb. And to think they have done it for 1.5 lakh people in Chennai who are elderly is amazing.
Yeah.
And when we and these are the same people, these are the same bureaucrats who we criticize all the time, that they are corrupt, they are bribed, they are inefficient, they don't know what they are doing. The same people, when it comes to elections, are able to do this phenomenal wonder. No other country can do this. That's the biggest outsourcing opportunity for India to run elections everywhere in the world. But then, that is one. Second, you look at the vaccination. A lot of the criticism, the scale in which we are rolling it out, and to every nook and corner. And yesterday there was a Times of India article about a doctor traveling to villages by walk so that he can vaccinate people in Chhattisgarh. Amazing stories. And we are able to do all this. Can we take those learnings from them? The learnings are there. The learnings are not in our glass buildings in Gurgaons and your Bangalore's. It is learnings are there.
I think it is related to what we find as sacrosanct. It means in our mind, there are some things we assign this category of that this is sacrosanct. We cannot compromise here. Right? And it may be anything. Means maybe elections is one sacrosanct thing, which I don't know, for whatever reason we believe in that, right? Means there are a lot of people who would still say that this is not fair, etc. I said you cannot, means no matter if you agree with the current government or not, that is irrelevant. You cannot denigrate an institution like election, right?
Exactly.
It is bad to even badmouth it. You can say it has flaws or whatever, but you blanket don't. This is sacrosanct. You cannot just means we have to assign some things as sacrosanct. Maybe vaccination is one such thing which is no compromise. Means we did that with a lot of other vaccinations also, right? A lot of diseases we were able to do it. So maybe vaccination, elections, these are some things like that. Maybe we have to elevate more things into that category to bring that.
Again, even coming on to the vaccination, the COVID application is a phenomenal example of how things could be. We have also had bad examples, even in the pandemic, we know the earlier application which we had. But then the COVID, I think, is a good example on how we can. I walked out in about half an hour, I got an SMS and I was able to download the certificate. US is still writing in paper and giving it to, I'm seeing in Twitter, a lot of people sharing, this is the slip I got after vaccination. Here I've got a QR code signed certificate.
Exactly.
After I walked out, I think that's why technology and the humanity and the Indian experience all, I think, comes together beautifully.
I think on that note, right, I think great discussion. I think the last example, I think election is a phenomenal thing of democracy technically, right, is a Western thing. We got it as a gift from US as a parting, I mean like UK as a parting gift. House of large elections and stuff like that.
No, just to be correct, it's not so. 1,000 years Chola kingdoms have done the Utramerur writings. have actually proven that we are democracy here. You should search for the Uttaramerur thing in Chola kingdoms in Tamil Nadu. They had local elections.
Yeah.
There was a king, but the local it was elected, and your son or daughter or your relatives, blood relatives, can't stand in the election for a number of years, and you cannot come continuously in the elections. There are so many things that they have defined in the Uttaramerur, the stones.
Oh, I didn't know that. I will check it out. It's
Maybe
good.
the modern version.
The modern version came from
Thank you.
UK, right? But then we have localized it and take it to a completely different planet altogether. The
Absolutely.
so-called advocates of democracy are nowhere in the scene, right? In the vicinity of how a democratic election. And the interesting thing is this. It is a institution which will be attacked for corruption and jugaad. People are working overtime to corrupt it. It's not like people will say that election commission is something which we won't try to influence or cheat. Now, those forces are extra overtime working to do that. Now, in spite of that, this one has become bigger, means there's something interesting. We can't just say, because the need to corruption is not there. But I think that's a great.
See, it's a running engine. To put it simply, our elections are a running engine. You can't stop it. It's not perfect, but yeah, as the engine runs, you have to keep correcting it. There is no other way of doing it. We shouldn't be complacent that it's a perfectly running machine, but it's a good running machine that we should keep aspiring to make it perfect.
Yes. And most important thing is we believe in it, right?
Absolutely.
It is not superficial. That's what I meant to say, right? It's not like because the English gave it to us, we have to keep it that way.
Correct.
It has gotten into our culture. It has gotten into our belief systems that this is something good, right? And we should maintain it.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Thanks all. Great discussion. Hope we'll connect more and catch you sometime soon. Venkat, thanks for joining.
Thank
Venkat.
you.
Thanks, Venkat.
Thank you. Anil.
Yeah. Bye.